Kathy, welcome to Waterstones.
Thank you very much, Will.
I've had great fun reading your memoir, in no small part because of my previous life as an actor. It has allowed me to relive some fantastic memories.
Okay.
And in fact, as I was saying to you as we were coming upstairs, I have a very vivid memory, although not vivid enough for me to remember exactly when it was, of going to the Old Red Lion, and you were there in the corner with a gaggle of friends, and I said to a friend of mine, "Is that Kathy Burke?" He's like, "Oh yeah, she's here all the time." And that's her mate Perry and all that sort of stuff. And I looked and I thought, what a cool table. I wish I was at that table. But it will come back to why it's a slightly sort of foundational place for you, the Old Red Lion. But I want to go back even further, if we can, to the very beginning, your childhood. You had quite an unsettled beginning in life.
Yeah.
But from reading your book, it seems like you were a child that people liked to spend time with. You seem to be very funny and entertaining. Is that how you remember your childhood, or am I reaching?
I mean, this is the problem, Will, because you're not the first person to say, "Oh my God, I love little Kathy." But I think I was quite irritating, really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I was really little, I didn't really have that many pals. And then when I went to school, I did. But sort of round the flats where I lived in Horton Mansions, I didn't really have any proper pals until I was a little bit older. It's weird when you look back. So you're just, one just writes about the stuff that stands out to you. And then I suppose, a memoir is naturally, a big up about yourself. So therefore it's going to come across, oh, she was such a great kid. But I don't think I was that great, actually. I think I was quite naughty, and I was a worry for a lot of people.
Yeah. The reason why I suppose I say that is because you when I say unsettled start, you were unlucky enough to lose your mother when you were not even 2. And your dad was not in a good place to be looking after you, so you were being looked after by various people. But then this woman, Pat Cook, sort of comes into your life, who was a child psychologist.
Yeah.
I was sort of doing...
Well, she wasn't then. She was sort of studying, I think.
Yeah.
Still.
Well, I was going to say, so she's looking at kids, particularly girls who are growing up without a mother and sort of studying that, as you say. And what she does is sort of take you out on Sundays to, I guess, get a bit of culture and a bit of stability in your life. But this isn't a short-term thing. She ends up doing it for 6 years. And this is why I say I think you might have been fun to be with, because she didn't need to do it for that long.
No.
But she clearly enjoyed the time that she spent with you.
Yeah.
What's your sort of memory of those Sundays that you spent with?
Oh, they were the best. I loved being with Pat more than anything, really, which is sort of a bit out of order because I had a wonderful godmother, Nellie, and a wonderful foster mother, Joan, and all their beautiful kids. But Pat was mine. Do you know what I mean? And it was special to me. She was special to me. And so originally she was friends with my social worker. This is as far as I can glean, She was mates with my social worker. She was doing a thesis about little girls who didn't have mums. Did my social worker know of anyone? Yes, she knew me. So I think Pat then met my dad, who was also called Pat, to talk to him about whether it was okay if she could take me out for some ice cream on a Sunday afternoon to just chat to me and study, I suppose. And then apparently Pat told me many years later she just really liked me. And so then it became a regular thing. So she'd take me out sort of, it felt like at least one Sunday of every month until I was about 9 or 10. And in the meantime, during this period, she'd met her boyfriend, then husband, Mayor, and then they started to have kids of their own, and then they left the country. So it was great to have her on the regular for that short period of time. And she did, well, it's a long period of time when you're a kid. It sort of goes on for decades, doesn't it, childhood? But she did. She would take me everywhere. We'd go to museums. We'd go to galleries. I remember, I've not put this in the book. I'm trying, Waterstone listeners, to give you little stories that are not in the book. But I remember we went to the Tate and there was a famous piece or sculpture or whatever it was, the bricks. I don't know if anybody remember that, which was just basically a block of bricks. And this was quite a big happening in 1968 or whenever it was. And so we queued to see these blocks of bricks. And I remember as we passed and looked, it was like queuing to see the dead Queen, you know, these fucking bricks. And I remember saying very loudly, that's what my dad does, because my dad worked on the building sites.
Yeah.
So I just thought, well, this is what my dad does. Why isn't what my dad does in an art gallery, you know? So that was a standout moment for me. And the other thing, Pat, I think about 2 or 3 Christmases, I went up to Wigan with her where she grew up and spent lovely times with her mother and father and her family, her sister and brother, who then they had their own kids, and I was treated exactly the same, and it was just so lovely. It was really nice. But I do remember, this also isn't in the book, dear listener, and but obviously when I first started going to Wigan, I was probably about 5. I was quite cute and I would tell jokes, and there was a corner shop at the end of their street. And I used to go into the corner shop and they were like, oh, here she is, the little Londoner and all that. And they loved my Cockney accent, so they thought I was very funny. And then I think there was a sort of gap of a couple of years. And I just remember when I went there again, I was probably about 7 or 8, and it was probably the last time I went. And I went to the corner shop and they were like, oh, hello, Kathy, and all this. And I told them a joke that had a swear word in it. And oh my God, the disappointment of the upset. I can still remember it. I remember feeling so, well, I don't know whether I was ashamed because I still continued to tell jokes with swearing in them. But I just remember feeling, oh, now they don't like me anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you look back and as an adult, you think, no, I'd be disappointed if I heard a little kid suddenly use a cuss word. I'd be like, oh, no, don't, you know. But anyway, it's quite a long-winded answer.
So it's a great answer. I'm really always fascinated to understand how people end up becoming actors. And I think particularly with you as well, that sort of growing up in the area of London that you grew up in, you end up at Anna Scher's school.
Yes.
But I wondered, in terms of knowing that that was something that you wanted to do, you've given a really good example there of like, you were clearly a great teller of jokes or sort of performer in everyday situations. But when did you feel that sort of first urge to do something closer to actual acting?
Well, it was really when I was at secondary school. And we had an English teacher called Mr. Paul, who wasn't my regular English teacher. But anyway, he started to do, we didn't do drama at my secondary school. So he started to do little sort of drama lessons on the sly, I think, because the school was sort of predominantly run by nuns. And he would get us to do little improvisations, and he was getting them all from this book that was written by Anna Scher. And after a couple of lessons where I was getting big laughs for my characters and what have you, he said to me, you know, you live in Islington. This place is in Islington. And, you know, you should think about going there. And then a girl in the class said, I go there and I can put your name on the list. So that was it. And then I thought I'd be going the next week, but then she informed me, no, there's like a 3-year waiting list because you don't audition to go to Anna's. You just wait till your name comes up and then you start going. So I think that was when I thought maybe this could be possible, that I could be an actor. but it still felt like a very far away
Mm.
dream, you know. And there were kids from Islington that were on the telly, people like Ray Burdis and Pauline Quirk and Linda Robson, Phil Daniels, and I'd sort of then gleaned they all went to Anna Scher's. So I very much thought, oh mate, this is the place I need to be at.
Yeah.
But I still had to wait.
Patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
I'm sure the nuns taught you. It was amazing alumni that she has, Anna Scher. That school has churned out so many amazing actors. You clearly had a great time there. And then you have this sort of lovely moment where a load of you end up doing this film, Scrubbers. And that is the beginning of really quite impressive professional work. You know, you sort of seem to find yourself gliding in there. Tell me a little bit about that experience, because obviously it's quite a jump to go from going to drama club, you know, down the road to suddenly being in a film with some quite big names.
Yes. No, it was. And by that time I was 17. So I joined Anna's just a couple of weeks before my 16th birthday. And back then, Equity was a very, very close shop, the Actors Union. So I sort of knew that the chances of me becoming a professional actor were going to be very, very slim, because I'd missed the sort of, you know, the amount of work you could do if you were under 16 to get an Equity card. So Anna Scher was very good at making sure that we didn't get carried away with ourselves in thinking we were all going to be actors and all that stuff. So I'd sort of resigned myself to the fact, okay, well, I'm really enjoying coming to Anna's, so maybe this is just going to be a hobby. And I was also really into music at that time, because there was punk and then there was two-tone and ska and I just loved music. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try and become a music journalist. I did drama at college, further education college. But anyway, that was what I was thinking. I thought, oh, next term, maybe I should do a journalism course. And there was a student union magazine, and I started doing a bit of writing for that, going to gigs and then doing reviews for it. So I thought that's the way to go. Yeah, I'm having this really lovely time at Anna's, and I've got new friends and what have you. And I liked being out of not being in gangs anymore, because when I was a teenager, I was very sort of into gangs and stuff. And then, out of the blue, this wonderful woman called Mai Zetterling, who was an actress herself from Sweden, but was now making documentaries and had made a couple of films, not in the English language. And then she was going to do Scrubbers, which was the female version of a great film called Scum that had been directed by Alan Clark. And yeah, and Anna came to me one day after one of the lessons and said, Anna Scher, beg your pardon, Mai Zetterling wants you to go for an audition. So this really shocked me. And I was like, I don't have an Equity card. And she said, don't worry about that for now. So luckily for me, I think there was about 6 of us that did not have Equity cards. That Mai Zetterling managed to get us temporary cards to do the film. So then the next thing I knew, I was in a movie, and it was amazing. And do you know what, Will? It's still I think it's still the favourite job I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Was that first one.
Yeah.
Because everything is new.
Yeah.
Everything is new. And I just couldn't believe that I was getting paid to do this, and getting paid quite handsomely, you know. And also, you know, the bonus of one of our executive producers being George Harrison from the Beatles. So the first job I ever did, I met a Beatle. It's like, how the fuck can you top that? I thought, you know, it's never going to get better than this. And in some ways, it never has, you know. Although I did meet another Beatle a few years later, but yeah.
It's really interesting you just mentioned there about earning your own money. The childhood that you describe in the book is one where every penny counts. And there's some great scenes where you're literally sort of scrabbling for change behind the sofa, or taking out your dad's pocket when he's a little worse for wear after Friday night. And the pride that comes from doing your first babysitting when you're 10,
Yeah.
having your own money, buying your own stuff. And I really enjoyed your program that you did about money. I thought it was really interesting where you were talking quite honestly about what it means to be poor and
Yes.
what our attitudes about money. Has that affected your attitudes throughout life when you've had work that has brought you money? Has it changed the way that you, I suppose, think about those earnings or what it means or the importance that might be attached to it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, yeah, I've never forgotten what it's like to be poor.
Yeah.
And I don't think you do, you know. So yeah, my attitude towards money is very much share it. If you've got it,
Yeah.
share it. And that's the way I feel about, people that have got billions and the fact they won't pay their tax. And I can't get my head around it.
Yeah.
It's sort of really weird, I just think you shouldn't become a member of parliament if you haven't done at least 10 years work in the real world.
Yeah.
And I also think that if you're born with a great deal of money, you should spend at least a year of your life knowing what it's like not to have money, to have to live on a budget. Because otherwise, I don't think there's any way somebody can understand. I mean, yeah, you get people with millions and billions that are philanthropists and do share, but they seem to be few and far between. That's what I think about money. If you've got it, try and share it. It's very easy for me to say though because I don't have kids, but I do have family.
The generosity that you're talking about, the sharing that you're talking about, is really clear. So there's a moment when you're a kid and you're going to a greengrocer, and without saying anything, he can see that your family needs more. So he just puts a little bit extra in the bag that you haven't paid for.
Yeah.
And you then notice that. And when you got a job in a baker's, you used to do the same thing.
Yes.
You could see who needed extra and you just slip it in the bag.
That's it.
But amazingly, you bumped into that greengrocer in the future. In the back, you were in the back of his cab. He'd become a caddie.
Yeah.
And you tell him that he basically taught you a really important life lesson.
Absolutely. It's called Dave, and he's a very lovely man. And yes, I think I first hailed his cab. I think it was probably about 10 years ago. And I get into the cab, and where you going, love, and all that. And I'm looking at him in the rearview mirror, and I said, "Do I know you?" And he really laughed, and he said, "Well, yeah, I'm amazed you can remember me." He said, "But I used to own the greengrocer stall on Tiverton Street." I was like, "Oh my God." I said, "You were so kind." I mean, listen, I had a lot of kindness in my childhood, but I think he stood out because he didn't know us. He lived in the flats, but we didn't know him. And it was just the fact of just putting nothing being said, and then extra apples were put in the bag, or plums or whatever. And anyway, and I said to him, your generosity meant a lot, and I did sort of behave that way myself when I got my job in the bread shop, And he said to me, "Well, my way of thinking is if you're kind to people, hopefully they'll be kind to others." And it was just so wonderful. I was like, well, I've certainly tried to live by that,
Shout out to Dave. We like Dave.
Big shout out to Dave.
I'm not going to exhaustively go through your CV of professional acting.
Oh, thank God.
But what I did want, because you have worked with some incredible actors, you've also worked with incredible comedians, sort of almost like there are two strands to your career. But I wondered actually whether you see it that way, whether you see a big division between your comic work and your what might be called sort of straight acting work. How do you view it? Is it all part of the same thing, or are they sort of different things?
Yeah, no, for me, it's all part of the same thing. Especially when I was younger, starting out, a job was a job. So when I first started to work with Harry Enfield, for example, it was, this is good because comedy pays more than straight work, than drama.
Yeah.
So that's why I was glad to get into the comedy world, just because there was more money in it. And I liked being funny. I really did. But I was very aware from a very young age, sort of 17, 18. I think it was my Zetlin that made me aware. My Zetlin would say to me, the director of Scrubbers would say, there's more to you. You've got to think about writing. You've got to think about directing. Otherwise, you'll get bored. And I just thought this was a ridiculous thing to say to me because I was 17. I was doing the greatest job of my life, which was Scrubbers. I thought, how on earth can I get bored with this? I will never be bored. Cut to within 18 months, I was like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck am I doing? It's so boring. It's so boring. Yeah, I think it's quite difficult when, like, if the first job you do is like a really special job and you're getting a lot of attention, and then the next job you do is like 2 lines in something where nobody knows your name and they just call you by your character name, and nobody tells you that lunch was called half an hour ago because you're sat in a fucking box somewhere waiting for somebody to go, oh, yes,
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that, but you look back and go, well, that was an apprenticeship, but it was very difficult sort of, because when I did Scrubbers, everybody loved me. You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden it was like, oh, who's that? Who's that? Oh, yeah. Makeup ladies being quite rude, and, I thought, oh, it's not as glamorous or as warm as,
You got that good advice from Maya Zetterling, and also Linda LaPlante, or Linda Marshall, as she was then as an actress, also encouraged you to look, I suppose, beyond the acting, that there was more out there that you could write, you could direct.
Yeah.
And you have gone on to do both of those things. The direction in particular is something that you've done lots of. Obviously a completely different discipline to the acting, but I suppose, what do you get from that? There's an obvious thing that you get from acting, like you say, sort of making people laugh, immediate feedback, all great. What do you get back from the direction side of things that has kept you sort of involved in that world?
Oh, well, I suppose it's that word control, which is seen as quite a negative thing. But, at the end of the day, it's sort of control over storytelling, the way you want a story to be told, or the way you feel a story should be told. So, you're the sort of boss of that to begin with. But what I was starting to dislike about acting was, your contributions not being really listened to, and you are just the puppet. We don't want to know what you feel about the script. You not just do it, So I was starting to find all that quite frustrating. But directing and you pick the team, and then a lot of my directing work isn't in this book because it happened after the book ends. But and I eventually got my team, my lighting guy Paul, and tried to work with the same designers and DSM, and so that was all really lovely. And then also, you pick the cast, and that was very important to me in the early days of directing, because I'd sort of done so many jobs by then that I sort of knew who weren't great team players. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being stuck with people for months on end as an actor, that doesn't happen as a director, because once the job's up and running, you're off and you're on to the next one. But making sure the cast as happy and a team as much as possible, that's the side of it I really loved. But also really getting to pick apart a script, the first sort of big play I directed, once I stopped acting and my book takes us up to the point where I decide I don't want to do this anymore, I just want to focus on theatre directing. And Dominic Dromgoole, who is one of our great theatre directors and producers, ran the Globe for about 10 years. But Dominic Dromgoole at that time was running the Oxford stage company, and he got in touch with me and said, there's a great play by Brendan Behan called The Quare Fellow, but nobody ever does it because it's impossible to do, because there are a cast of 18. And I was like, great. and it was lovely to pick that play apart and understand, well, why is this so difficult to do? And it was, I remember the way I got my head around that play was I typed it out myself from the text. And it was a really good exercise in slowing down the reading and slowing down understanding each individual character, especially when there were 18 of them and the majority of them didn't have names. They were prisoner A, B, C, D, etc. And that was such a brilliant exercise. So by the time I'd finished transcribing, copying it out, I remember describing it once as posh colouring in, because that was sort of what it was. That's what it felt like. And once I'd done that, I completely knew the play, understood the play, and understood each individual character. And that was a great job. I loved that job because, did I have two Englishmen? Two Englishmen and the rest were Irish, and it was fucking great.
I remember that production. It was.
Did you see it?
It was very notable. My wife remembered it as well. I was talking about this book. It was, as you say, Dominic pointing out this. The play is great, but it never gets done, and it felt like you kind of solved that problem. With that production, and I feel like it is done far more now because people kind of go, "Oh, it's doable."
It is doable. Oh yeah, everything's doable if you just sort of put your whole thought into it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's one of the things I love about directing.
Just to go back to acting one last time, a lot of people may know, I suppose, your big acting achievement, if you like, was winning Best Actress at Cannes for Nil by Mouth. And it was really interesting to read your take on not only that job, it was an incredible cast, hard work. I loved the way that you managed to get Charlie Creed Miles to stop doing method acting, but we'll leave readers to discover that when they read the book.
Wasn't me, it was Ray Winston.
But obviously a fantastic achievement to win that award. But you point out that the response that you got after that was actually sort of vaguely patronising, almost as though you had never acted before in your life, and you had magically gone from doing sort of Waynetta slob to winning an acting award. Tell me a little bit more about that, and I suppose the frustration that comes from having that amazing moment and then other people's reactions sort of slightly ruining it.
Well, what happened after that, suddenly I was on the list of film actors, and I wasn't on that list before, and it was like, right now all these film offers were coming through, which was sort of lovely, but it was also quite discombobulating. I was in the middle of doing a television job at that time as well. I was doing Tom Jones, Henry Fielding's Tom Jones for the BBC. So I was sort of back at work, just sort of mucking in, and yet all this stuff was going on. And I did do I had to make decisions quite quickly. So I did a film out in Ireland called Dancing at Lunacy, and I did a small part in Elizabeth. I played Queen Mary in Elizabeth. And I found it quite tricky, Will, because these people didn't really know my work. It was just, she's on the list now. She's Irish heritage. Great. She's won at Cannes. Great. Let's get her in Dancing at Lunacy. And then when you're there, it's a bit, Well, particularly the Dancing at Lunacy one, our producer was a guy called Noel Pearson. Great producer, had some great body of work. But he was very patronising towards me. I think he thought he was being flattering and complimenting me because, the characters are from Donegal. My Donegal accent was great. No reason why it shouldn't be. But, paraded around like, isn't it remarkable?
Mm.
Isn't it? Have you heard the way she speaks in real life? And yet she can do a Donegal accent. And I just was thinking, hang on a fucking minute. I've been working for nearly 20. I've done American, I've done Canadian, I've done all sorts. Why is this such a big dealio? And yeah, and then the next job I did, again, it was a little bit, I was sort of treated like I was a bit of an imbecile, needed to be line read, because then I was told, well, I didn't realise you were from a working class background. And so all this stuff was sort of going on, and I was just thinking, hang on a minute. I remember saying to my agent, Stephen, at the time, I said, I feel like I've gone backwards. And it feels like I'm starting again, and all my body of work means fuck all, and I'm not enjoying this. I do not like being a film actor. And so then eventually I ended up going back to comedy television, doing Gimme Gimme Gimme, which was far more fun, and less soul destroying, basically. Because, you know, the thing is, Will, I don't want to sound ungrateful.
No.
You know, I was very, very grateful, but not so grateful that I would let people talk to me like I was a fucking arsehole.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to be that grateful. So it was quite a tricky time. And then all that led to me eventually going, yeah, all right, I've had enough of this for a while. I'll just be behind the scenes.
Yeah. Is there an element of classism to it? Because as you say, it sort of feels very much like the idea that somebody from the working class would be able to do an accent that they don't actually have, you know.
Yeah.
As you say, disregarding decades of work as an actress.
Yeah.
And even that idea of wanting to, or being made to feel grateful for something, I don't imagine some of the sort of more upper class actors walk around with, oh, I should feel so grateful for this opportunity. It's sort of taken as read that.
Yes. I see a lot of actors sometimes when they'll be quite modest, or they'll want to give a modest impression, and they'll say, what's that saying? Something syndrome. What's that?
Oh, imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah. I have never had imposter syndrome. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think any of them have. It's just a polite way of going, oh my goodness, you know, I can't believe I'm in this position, and all that business. But the class thing, you know, it was just, I never saw sort of, you know, posh actors, for want of a better word, you know, if they were playing working class or whatever, it was never sort of mentioned, really. It was sort of like they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. But anytime the working class people were doing stuff, it was always sort of pulled apart a little bit, really. So, yeah, there was a bit of a divide there, you know.
I'm slightly conscious of time running out for me. So in order to, I suppose, to put it all together, there's a real clear sense of reading the book that after that unsettled beginning and not being able to rely, I suppose, on your immediate family or your dad in particular for that sort of support, you've always ploughed your own furrow. You've always been very driven and sort of independent. What have been the guiding principles, or what has been motivating you, whether it's acting, comedy, writing, directing? What I suppose do you keep at the front of your mind in making decisions about what to do next?
Happiness. I mean, it really is. It's just, I'm very lucky now, because I am in a position, and I have been for quite a few years, where I can pick and choose what I want to do. So I will always choose something. Well, am I going to have a nice time doing this? Is it going to be a good time? When our wonderful publisher, Holly, first approached me about writing a book, I actually wrote a couple of chapters before I agreed to do it, because I just wanted to see, am I going to enjoy doing this? If it's going to be nothing but painful, then what's the fucking point? But actually, I did quite enjoy writing the first 2 chapters, and very inspired by the novelist Percival Everett,
Yeah.
his wonderful novel, The Trees.
Yeah.
Because I read The Trees and those chapters are so short. And I thought, that's the way to do it. Really fucking short chapters. And yes, so once I did those and I enjoyed doing the short chapters, I thought, yeah, all right. I mean, the motivation when I was young was obviously money.
Yeah.
But now the motivation, I'm an old lady of 61, is happiness. It's not a bad place to be, Will.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
And finishing with a great book recommendation as well with Percival Everett. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. All his books. Yes, please. He's a genius.
Kathy, I would love to talk with you for much longer. But
Oh, I know you would, Will.
Yeah. But thank you so much for this time.
Thank you very much.